Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the build video for the Cormorant II. I'll have a list of everything you'll need to build this up on screen right now, and in addition, you can go to the little bar down below and I'll have chapters set up so that you can figure out which piece you're building at what point in the video, and that'll just help you navigate through it a bit better. Before we start, there's some things that you'll want to decide, and that's if you're wanting to do Drooperons, which are these little cool leading edge devices right here that should improve your roll rate a little bit, as well as these Fowler Flaps right here. You need to decide if you want to do both of those, one or the other, or none of them at all. And depending on what you choose, you'll have the option to skip those specific parts of the build. This plane is designed for someone who has prior experience with the Flitetest building style. In difficulty, I'd rank it somewhere between the Master Series and the Simple Series. It's got elements that are similar to the Master Series in that it has a semi-monocoque fuselage, so it's got formers and a skin, but the wing is the traditional FT fold-over style. The geometry is also quite complex, so it's a bit of a longer build, and there will be some parts in here where everything isn't laid out perfectly for you. It's not precisely step-by-step, although it is for most of the way, so you're going to have to use your brain in some parts, and I'm sure you can do that. So without further ado, let's get started. So to get started, what we're going to do is I'm going to prepare my building surface. Now this isn't ideal because, well, for start, it's not flat. There's sort of a edge here, as well as the fact that it's covered in a bunch of flux and soldering residue. So I'm going to fix that real quick with a sheet of foam board. And this will be sort of a sacrificial piece that'll provide a decent enough flat surface to work on. Now I feel like we're going to start with the wings here, so that's what we're going to do. So you've got these two, which are sort of the middle wing skins, left and right, and then these, which are the outer ones. We'll toss the outer ones aside for now and just focus on the center ones. So, I do have enough space here, that's nice. What we're going to do is we're going to get some Scotch tape here, and we're just going to line these up by the little marks for the spars, where those go. So that's looking pretty good right there. Maybe a bit farther back. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then we're just going to have one piece of tape right here for now. And we're going to flip it over. And then we're going to lay a piece of tape straight down this hinge. And of course you can cut off where it goes through the little wiring hole here, as well as on the ends. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to flip it back over, and we're going to cut that tape, or peel it if you'd like, that we put on there to align the two pieces. And of course, I got to get myself a scrap piece of foam here real quick. It'll become useful in the next step. Now we're going to open up this hinge here, and we're going to get a nice bead of glue in there. So, let's get on there. And let that lay down there, and just wipe the excess off here. And this will help join the two skins together nice and proper. Now I want to get those outer wing skins and start attaching those, but before we do that, we're going to want to open up the leading edge on these as well. So we're going to do this. Yoink. So we got one of those done. The second one done. Just like so. So what I think we're going to do is basically just bevel these hinges here. And then we'll bevel the hinges for this as well. So basically do the leading edge bevels for all of the wing. And right here, make sure to keep some of those marks on there because those will be used for locating where the motor pods go. Or, I call them motor pods, but you could also call them nacelles. Either one works, really. So just make sure you've got a little bit of those markings left. So as you can see here, I'm just leaving the tiniest little bit of those marks. If you would focus, hello? Yes, so I'm just leaving a little bit of those marks right there and right there left. So next we'll do the beveling for the outer wing sections. That's pretty easy. If you're having trouble with this step, if the foam's like sort of curling up and crumpling a bit, get yourself a bunch of hobby blades and change them out regularly. Most of the problems that you have with building stuff like this can just be solved with a sharper knife, typically. Alright, so now everything is beveled. We can start to fold them over, sort of work that crease so that it folds and does its thing, you know, sort of break it in. We'll do that on all of the wing bits. I was lucky enough to not go through the paper on any of these, but if you do, that's no big deal. You can just put some tape over it, and you'll be alright. And as you do this, the top of the wing surface will start to crease a little bit from the score marks that are in there. So now that we can do this, we can get these outer wing sections on, so that's what we're going to do next. Before we do that, there's one thing we need to do, and that is to cut the relief for the ailerons and or the drooperons. So there's these little tabs on the side, they're 1/16 of an inch. You just chop those off, and this will just allow a little space between the trailing edge of the wing and the aileron so that when it deflects, it doesn't scrape on anything. And if you are doing drooperons, here's your point to choose. You're going to do the relief cuts for those as well. Another nice thing about using foam board as a backing here is you don't have to worry about scratching up the table or anything, which is nice. And we'll move this around where it needs to go. We'll fold this skin up, and then you'll see that it'll slot in right there. It should. So what we're going to do is we're going to temporarily tape this on the top surface, just like this. You can put a little one of these at the end of the tape to make it go a bit easier. And then flip it over. We're going to just tape along that seam line there. So there we go. Set that back down. This is quite an unwieldy wing for the amount of space I'm working in. So there we go. So that's down. I'm going to peel this bit of tape off. And we are going to get some glue in there. When you're doing this, be careful not to glue the Drooperon when you're close to the leading edge of the wing. There we go. And just smear that. There we go. That's good. While we're here, we can also take out this flap and this little extra bit, which won't be needed. So this can go, and then we will cut out that flap. I think that might have been out of frame, but there we go. So there's our flap off, and we'll deal with this later. Set it over there. Another thing we can do is remove this little cutout here. That will be for the aileron linkage. What I'm going to do is these markings here for the rear of the motor pod, I'm going to just poke down in, and that will transfer it to the other surface, which is where they will need to be. Okay, and we can do that on the leading edge as well. Okay. We can also remove foam from here, 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 and here on both sides of the wing. So I'll go ahead and do that. You know, I'm going to hold off doing the steps on the other side for now, and we're just going to focus on building one half of the wing, And then you'll basically repeat the same process on the other half to get to where we need to be. While you're at it, you could also transfer these marks to the bottom of the wing as well. There are 2 spars, so we've got this one which has a little notch in it, and this one which has a big notch in it. So the big notch spar is going to go towards the front, so it's going to be like that, and that notch is for the servo here, and the little notch is going to be for the servo as well, but it just butts up right against it. So what we've got to do now is we've got to get this little servo bit out. So we can cut that out, like so. And then this rest of the bit for the servo, you want to leave the paper on the bottom side. So you will peel the paper off the top, and then sort of gouge the foam out of it. Let's just get all the stuff off the bottom there. We're good. Okay. Alright, so I've got the servo I need. Got the servo horn where it needs to be. And we're just gonna get this guy put right down into there. So that should fit somewhat like that. So I'm just gonna glue it down. Just dab glue there. And glue it down on in. Like so. Just hold it there for a little bit. This is also one of the advantages of having a backing like this, is that you can poke the servo horn down into the surface. So building this wing is going to be a bit difficult without having something like this to poke into. In fact, I'm going to get another sheet, put it below it so I can poke into it a bit farther. There's going to be a lot of stuff on the bottom of this wing, and some of it, like these servos, we can't install without building the entire wing first. So we're just gonna have to deal with that. And I'll also put just a bead on the back here, just for a bit of extra, you know, in there by the little tabs as well. There we go. Okay, so that's proper in there now. We'll just hold that there and wait for that to dry. Does hot glue dry or does it cool? Is it wet? I don't know. So this is the rear spar here. We're going to route the wire between these 2 spars, and eventually it'll cross over probably somewhere around here. So the first spar we're going to install is the one that has the small notch in it, and so we're just going to take that notch out. It's basically just cutting this thing like so, and that little notch comes out. So we're going to have one part of the spar on this side of the servo and one part on that side of the servo. It's pretty simple. Basically, you just glue that in where the mounting lines are. So that's what we're going to do. Now we're just going to get that little last bit on. These are actually longer, but I accidentally snapped off the end of them basically when I was cutting out the plans. So we'll go a couple inches longer in the final design. We'll just glue that in there. Like so. It's the same process. We've got that little cavity right here that we have to remove. And it's pretty much just the height of the part itself. So that's why you can toss most of it. So this one will go right here. And when you're doing these lines here, the inner lines here are for the doublers, basically, the spar doublers. The outer lines are what you want to put these spars on. So we'll go ahead and do that. And we could put a couple dabs around the servo too, just to triple ensure it's really in there, you know. Never hurts. Okay, so I've got these, and these are parts 7 and 8 for each wing. And these aren't structural necessarily, they're just for spacing for the trailing edge of the wing. I'm going to cut that off there. You won't have to do this. There we go. And we're going to peel this stuff off right here. So, make it a bit easier on myself. And I'll just peel that. And since these are non-critical, you could also remove the paper on the inside too. And you want the widest, thickest part of these to be towards the middle. So this one will go here, something like that. And then this one's for the ailerons. This one's going to be difficult to peel apart, or pry apart because it's two very thin pieces. Okay, there we go. This will also help sort of seal the trailing edge there from anything. Now this is actually for the other side because I got my parts mixed up, so I'll get the other one. Okay, so let's get these things in. So we've got this. And along this surface right here. There we go. Looking good. You want to make sure that the paper there covers the trailing edge. There's a bit of glue to pop through, and that's fine. Stick that servo arm back down in there. And that's a little spacer done. And we can do that for the ailerons as well. We're going to have to cut out a little thing for where the control horn will go. Okay, let's do that. Get the extra glue on this end bit, help it stick down, and we'll send it in there. And we'll make a cut there for the servo horn. So the next thing we are going to do is get some of the stuff prepared for the Drooperons. So we're going to transfer this mark to the opposite side of the paper. And we're going to we're going to score this area right here, these two lines, if you are doing the Drooperons. If you're not, you don't have to do this. This is optional. So you're going to score those two and then cut through it, but not all the way along the length, just in certain parts. So what this will do is it'll allow us to fold over the wing, and then after we fold over the wing, we'll be able to cut this out and free the Drooperon. And if you are doing the Drooperons, what you're going to want to do is take this, open this up, and we probably should have done this before I put this on there, but we're going to bevel this because it is effectively a control surface hinge. So this right here, we're going to bevel this side of it. This would be a lot better if I didn't glue it on the wing already, but what you going to do? And we're going to score these and score that. And if you weren't doing the Drooperons, you would have scored this line right here, but since we are, we're leaving that just as a hinge like this. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on doing basically what I just did here, just for the other side, and I'll meet you guys back then. Alright, next we're going to take our two spar doublers here, and we're going to glue them to the inside of these spars here. So it's going to be pretty simple. We're going to have one that's going to go like that, and one that is going to go like that. And so we're just going to glue these right in with a bunch of glue. And don't be stingy with the glue here, because this is where a good bit of the structural integrity for this craft comes from. And we're going to put some on the bottom here as well. And we're going to get that right there. Wiggle it around a bit to distribute the glue. And we're going to clamp it on because I have some clamps and I want to use them. And while you're at it, you can go ahead and run a little bead along the bottom edge here. Move these clamps up a bit. Just helping out. Just to really reinforce that sort of central area. So now we're going to do the back one in. Same sort of method here. Just cover these faces with glue. And then you're going to want to put some on the bottom here. So I was just really interrupted by the memory card of my phone filling up, so I might have lost a bit of footage there, and if you're seeing this, I have. But I haven't basically done anything else. What I've done is I've just attached the Y harness for the ailerons. That's about it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take these clamps off, and we are going to put these little Drooperon things on. So this is what's going to separate the Drooperon from the rest of the craft and keep it spaced out, or the rest of the wing, rather. So these are just going to go on both sides of the sort of Drooperon cutout that we measured earlier. So we're going to want to take these little spacer boys, and we're going to want to put those right on either side of this little line here. And we'll line that up with the front there. Keep it stuck down there. We'll do it again with this one, like so. And we'll repeat that on the other side. Now we're going to get to work on closing out the middle section of the wing. So I've got to find a way to get these servo wires through, as well as for the flap servos here. So what we're going to do, I think, is just route them over the top of the spar here. We're going to make a tiny little cut in the spar on the top and just get them through. But before that, what I want to do is to get these wires secured down a little bit. So I'll just put a little dab of glue on there, get these somewhat taut so that they won't be in the way, and just glue them down. So we're going to want our flap servos here, which I just soldered 2 servos together right here. You can do this with a Y harness as well. Or if you have an actual flap mixer, you won't have to mount them like this. You can mount them like that. And we'll get the flap wires through. We want to make sure we have enough length so that these can go both ways. So we're going to want a bit more there. We still want to make sure that this can get out the other end. It looks like I've made these wires just about the perfect length. That's about as far as I can go there. And I can get that in good there, and that in good there. So that's good. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a little drop of glue in there. And put those wires down into it. And we're going to fill that off on the top with more glue. Sort of make up the gap that there is in the spar now. Level it off from the top. And that'll just give it a little bit of extra strength, because most of the stress, bending stress on the spar is countered by tension and compression forces on the very most outside of the spar. So we want to make sure that that area is fairly strong. So now I'm going to do the same thing for the front spar here. So just put a dab of glue in there, and finish that off with some more glue. There we go. Now at this point, if you did have your battery Y harness, you could route that through here and actually in here, but I don't have that done yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to fold over this wing. And the way we're going to do that is first by scoring all 3 of these on each side. And then we're going to do this by section. So we're going to break it like this, and like this, and like this. And we'll do each one of these at a time. 1, 2, 3, there we go. Okay. So the first one we're going to want to do, we're going to want to get glue in here, glue in there, and I don't think, yeah, we won't need, you know what, we could do that in one fell swoop. So we can get glue in here, glue in here, glue in here, and glue on top of both spars. So I'll go ahead and do that. And just a little bit of glue in here. You don't really need it in this bit, but on the spars you definitely do. So don't be stingy with it on the spars. This is one of those cases where the bigger the gab, the better the jab. So we're just going to fold that over and hold it there, like so. Did I get any on the back spar? I did not. You don't want to do that as well. Yoink. And just hold this there. You can take any excess that comes out, you can just sort of work that onto the spar surface, give it a bit of a better bond, like this. And we're just going to hold this and wait until it either dries or solidifies. And of course, we're going to repeat that step on the other side. And in the center here, you're going to have to sort of finagle it a bit, maybe crumple the foam on the bottom side of it to get that to slide into place proper-wise. And it's okay if this gets crinkled a bit because you're not going to see it. Just don't want to hold that where it is. So now, we're going to focus our efforts on this outer wing section here. The next thing we're going to want to do is get this outer wing surface done. So we're going to sort of test fit it, and you want this gap to close here. So that's going to take a bit of finagling, but you should be able to get it to do it. So I'm having a bit of trouble getting it to meet there, so I'm just going to form this a bit more while I still have easy access to it like that. Okay. So now what we're going to want to do is, well, we can do this sort of bit or part-wise as well. So we can peel this back a bit up here. Okay, that's where we want it to be. So now we're going to put glue on top of the servo, on top of these two spars, and on top of the Drooperon things, all the way down here as well. So just run a bead along here, out to here, another one here, out to there, across the spars, top of the servo. And down it goes. And when you're doing this, you're going to want to focus your efforts on making sure that this meets that edge. That can be done by squishing the leading edge down. I'm just going to hold this here for as long as it takes. And I don't think there's anything else we need to do there, so we can just glue down the trailing edge right here. And just hold that. And this should be flush with the surface that you're building on. And of course, we'll repeat the same process on the other side. Okay, so now it's time to do the flaps. I'll be doing the Fowler Flaps. If you were doing split flaps, it would be pretty easy. You just wouldn't cut these out. You would hinge basically the lower surface and have a servo inside here, deploy it, or outside it, I guess, if you wanted. And that should be simple enough to figure out. Again, if you didn't want flaps, you didn't have to cut these out. But since I'm doing Fowler Flaps, I'll show you guys how to do that. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you want to get some popsicle sticks here, and you're going to want to get 4 of them and go from the end, or not from the end, from the center of the radius here to the end is going to be 2.65 inches, 2 5/8 inches. But since this is 3/8, I'm fairly certain. Yeah, since this is 3/8 across, you're going to add 3/16 to that. So that's 2 5/8 plus 3/16 is 2 13/16. Does that sound right? And that will be from the end 2 813 thou, or 812 thou and 5/10. So let's go to that. So we got 1, 2, 8, and then we said 13, but it's basically 12.5. So look at it. Yeah, it's close enough right there. Okay. And we'll just mark these. These calipers right here, this is sort of a smoke 'em if you got 'em sort of deal. You can just use any old ruler, and as long as you're reasonably accurate, this should work fine. Okay, now I've got those marked. I'm going to get a pencil here just to make those marks a bit easier for you guys to see. And there, and you're just going to want to cut on that line. So I'm going to use a pair of pliers because that's what I'm going to use. Alright, so there's our 4 bits. You can discard these. And now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make a little hole that's the size of a control horn wire, which is 39 thousandths. But, you know, it doesn't really matter, just as long as you find a way to get a hole in there. And we want it to be, since this is 3/8, we want it to be 3/16 from that radius. So we want it to be in the center of that radius. So 3/16 is 18.1875, so that's 187. So we're just going to try and find the center there. And again, you can do this by eye. Measurements aren't super critical, so I'll just mark those up so you guys can see where the center is. And now we get to make a hole through there that is the diameter of landing gear wire. So there's several ways to do this. I don't have a drill that small, so what we're going to do is sort of improvise something. Let me cut off a length of control horn wire. So this is the control horn wire here. You can see it is about 39 thou. And so we're going to basically just bend this into a little sort of screwdriver. So we're going to go like that and like this. If you have a better way of making a hole than this, please do let me know. But we're going to go like that. And I'm going to start it off just with a normal screwdriver, just to get a little dimple there that we can have at. There we go. And we're just going to sort of go like this. And I realize now I should have made this a bit less jank. There we go. So now there's a lot less flex in that. That should be a bit easier. And we're basically just going to go like this until we make our way through. Okay, there's one. That's 2. And make sure your fingers aren't on the other side of this, because when it pokes through, you don't want it to poke into you. That's 3. This will be our last one. There we go. So we've got all 4 of those now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our flaps here. We're just going to take out these little bits, crush the foam down in there. Just like that. Do that on both of the flaps. There we go. Another thing you'll want to do is actually set 2 of these aside. So only glue in 1 of these. And I'm wondering if I glued in, yes, I glued in the one that I shouldn't have glued in. Brilliant. So that's fine, but I'm going to have to, I just made stuff hard for myself. So we're going to glue in these 2 now and get those straight. And why I said I made it hard for myself is that I'm going to have to put another hole in here for the linkage to this. And of course you want to make sure it's square, because the geometry of this is quite critical to the flap functioning properly. Okay, so this, what we're going to do is we're going to go 1/4 inch from that hole to the center of this. So what I'll do is I'll get myself on 3/16, 1/8, 7-ish, right there. Find the center line of that part. And then I need to go 3/4 plus the 3/16 there. So that would be, I believe, 15/16. And we're just going to go from the end there. So we're going to mark that up. And we're going to do the same sort of pseudo drill hole thing through there. First with this. But since it's too large, transition to this. And this thing will be, this will be the place that the linkage from the flap servos connects to. There we go. And now I've got to do it on this thing, so that'll be fun. And we're through. Now I've just got to glue this one in. This is one of the reasons why I have a cutout in here, is that if you get this corner stuck on some glue, it'll bring it up. But with this, a little cutout prevents you from doing that, which is nice. Okay, so now the flaps are complete, but we still got a bit more to do with these popsicle sticks. So we're going to do basically the same thing we did for those, except we're not going to cut them. So we're just going to, or we're not going to cut them yet at least. So we're just going to put a little dot in the center of the radius of those. A little hole, yeah. I'd really like to get a drill of some sorts that is this small, but I don't have any. The smallest I have is 1/16 of an inch. That's all I have to do. I did consider using some brass inserts in here. I actually do have a smaller diameter steel wire and some brass tubing that fits snugly over it that I could use for this, but I think most people won't bother with that sort of extent, so we'll see how it holds up with just the usual steel rod and wood stuff, which I guess it's fine because that's used on basically all control horns. So alright, that is the last one there. So now what we're going to do, we're going to set these aside for now. We are going to tape these to the bottom of the wing and get them into the position that they will be in when they are retracted. So we'll get some tape here. And you want to leave a little bit of a gap on this side, just so that there's clearance. The gap here is because since the hinges are actually tilted this way, when the flap deploys, it actually moves slightly to this side. So we're going to get a good bit of clearance there. And this is temporary, so you could add these little tails to it. Basically, we want to effectively rejoin this thing as part of the bottom wing surface. So you should be able to do that with 3 bits of tape, or less if you'd like. 1, 2, and 3, just to hold the trailing edge where it needs to be. So that's looking good. I'll do that with the other one as well. It is worth noting that after I do this, the bottom of the wing will become pretty much impossible to set down fully on something, because it'll have a bunch of stuff sticking out from it, and that's okay. So now that those are in the retracted position, we can punch out those little things we marked earlier, right here. In fact, I shouldn't even have them marked out, I should just have them be punched out, really. Which I think is what they're labeled in the plans, so yeah, but take those, knock them out, mess that one up a bit, that's fine. So now what we need to do is we need to attach these to those. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to get some of that wire and we're going to stick it through there and get it down tight. It might be wise actually to do this without having the flap installed on the airplane, and that's easy enough to do actually, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take that back off. So about an inch-ish of this. We're going to give it the same thing we did, but not at a 90-degree angle, slightly less. So we'll go in, go through, and I want to make sure that I'm on the right side here as well. Which side is that supposed to be on? Yes, that's on that side. So these are supposed to be towards the inside. The fixed bits are towards the inside, the ones in the flap are towards the outside. And we'll just do something like this. This won't be perfect, but it's going to be better than nothing. So going to basically try and bend this bit upwards. So now, basically we have this U-shape here, if you'd focus. Well, you could see it pretty good. So it's not fully pinched in yet. So we're going to take that, and I think this is going to be the way to do it. I'm sort of figuring this stuff out on the fly because I haven't actually built this plane before. But I should just be able to pinch this close. Like so. Get that bit more of a tweak there. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Cut off the excess. Don't point it at your eyes. There we go, and I think that's fairly okay. It's not the best, it's not the worst. We're gonna see if it works. And we'll repeat that for the other 4 of them. And one of the things you can do to prevent these from cutting you once they've been snipped down to an appropriate length is you can rotate them so that they're pointing upwards towards the flap, and then glue them in place or tape them or something. And of course, if you're doing that, make sure to only do one side of them, not both. Okay, now it's time to glue in the flaps. So we're gonna stick those down there and try and line this flap up. So get it to where it needs to be. Somewhere around there. Put that in. Now we want to bring that trailing edge up to where it needs to be. And when you're doing this, you can use a straight edge or a ruler of some sort to check that it is in plane with the rest of the bottom of the wing, which it should be. So this one is looking pretty good. So we're going to take these out a little bit, put some glue around the base. Oh, there goes my glue stick. So we're just going to put a little bit around there. Just to hold it in for a little bit before we really glue it in from the top side. Get some of this here. Push those in. And we're going to make sure that this flap is where it needs to be. And we're going to try and get access to the top of the wing without having to deal with these things on the bottom. So we're going to overhang this over the edge of the table here. Like so. Those are seated up against it. Now you can see we have all of these sticking through. So what we're going to do is we're going to trim those off. We're going to leave, I don't know, maybe 1/4 inch below there. Be very careful not to put any significant side or upwards or downwards forces on there, just so snap that like that. I'll find those someday. Okay. So now we're going to glue these in from the top side, and we're also going to put these over them. So it's going to be a lot stronger. So hold this in place, put that over the top. That's what it's going to look like. So we're going to do that. Just put gobs of glue on it. Make sure it's anchored really well in there. That should be good. And just slide that over the top, like so. And if you want to save a bit of weight, it doesn't hurt to pick up the glue there. And as we've completely messed up the our ability to set this thing down flat, we'll do that even more by finally gluing down these flap servos here. So I have linkage stoppers on these, so I'll be able to independently adjust the flap positions. And they're just wide together, there's no flap mixer or anything on them. So I'm going to stick those through. And then we're just going to glue them down so that the center of the servo horn is in the center. And if we check the range of motion, it ends up approximately proper. So I'm going to glue this servo down and then the other one down. And we'll get the other one zipped down. This will go this way because if you Y and aileron together, they deflect opposite directions. If you have them symmetrical. But if you don't have them symmetrical like this, then they'll deflect the same direction, which makes sense. It's a bit too much glue there. Don't want it to get on my control horn. There we go. The arms I'm using for these servos are 1 inch in length and 1 inch from the center of the linkage stopper to the center of the servo itself. And that should give me enough throw, especially if I use if I increase the dual rates on these servos. So, all right, now we're going to finally close out the wing. So we're going to put glue on these trailing edge strips and along the trailing edge, or what's left of it anyways, right here. I'm going to put the flaps down while doing this so I don't get any glue on them. And you just need a little bit here. The loads aren't going to be that high. That'll be good. And then just put these down like so. And just get them lined up there. This one is giving me a bit of trouble. We're gonna do a quick, this is why you test fit things. A quick bevel there, pull that bit out. There we go. Okay. That's better. Now I think I might have to re-glue that. That's what I'm going to do. It always sucks to re-glue stuff because it's all stringy now. You're adding extra mass, but there's not much you can do about that. Always test fit things before you go and glue. And to make this a bit easier to hold down the trailing edge, I'm going to try and find something. You know what, we'll use my glue box. We'll put this under the center of it to raise it up off of the bottom there. So that's nice and raised. Let's close this out for real this time. Okay, there we go. Set that over there. And come down with these. Why is it doing that again? Come on. There we go. That'll work. Come on. There we go. Okay, okay. I never learned. You could sort of peer up onto the trailing edge and clamp down on any places that might not be making contacts. Now that we're here, we can move those flaps up. And I'm just gonna tape them in, yeah, I think I'll tape them in place right now just to keep them from deploying when they shouldn't. Again, you could do a little dog ear sort of thing on here. On both sides this time. We're just gonna put a nice big bead of glue across this top wing join and squeegee it off. There we go. Get a piece of scrap foam and just take it all off. There we go. And you won't be seeing this since it'll be under a aerodynamic cover, so if it gets messy, that's fine. Next thing we can do is go to these outer wing panels and just tape up the joints on these. So get some tape going. Gonna need about that much. So right there. And we can put some glue on there too, now that I think of it. So just this little zigzag here. That's all you need. because this part up here is Drooperon, this part doesn't connect to that bit, and this part's aileron. So that's good. Get some tape on there. If I can get this part to stop sticking to my fingers. Ah! It's really on there. There we go. And this will just serve as sort of insurance in case something bad happens to the spar, and the skin of the wing can take some of the load. And we'll do that on the other side as well. I've been thinking about sort of paint jobs I could do for this thing. And since this craft was originally built in Kerbal Space Program, I think something similar to that with like a sort of pseudo space-y vibe would go pretty well with it, you know. After all, the cockpit on this thing was basically, it's basically a space shuttle nose. Well, that's what it was designed around, at least. There's 4 of these. There's 2 per wing panel, and these just slot right into there. You're going to want to pinch these a little bit first so that they have a bit of an easier time sliding into the fuselage. So just pinch the top of them right there and glue them in. With this, just some small beads on the side is enough, because these won't be doing much structural stuff. And you just want to leave a little bit of them on the surface there. And bias them pointed inwards if you can. That'll help in ease of getting the wing to sort of fit on. Now these things don't have anything to register them against the back, except, well, the bottom ones technically do because they have the trailing edge spacer there, but top ones don't, so just put them in however far it feels good. Now we're going to get working on getting the wingtip set up. So those score lines that we had earlier should be easy enough just to get a straight edge on those and cut that little strip there straight out. So that's what I'm going to do. This probably isn't the best angle, is it? I think I'm getting something in there. Yeah, I am. Nice. Okay. Then we can take that all the way through. That should free the Drooperon. If I've done it properly. Hello? Okay. So that should be able to pop open now. And it has. And then we've got to get this back strip off of there. That's no big deal. Just go like that. Line it up. I do have clamps for a reason. Let's put those to use. Will this be wide enough? Yes, it will. Okay. That's good. And we'll go... Hopefully you guys can see this. Framing! Framing! There we go. Straight down there. Okay. That should come off. And we've got our Drooperon separated. Ta-da! And we can peel off this paper too, while we're at it. And so, I'll take that clamp off. That clamp might have been a bit too much here. It actually creased the foam a bit, but now, so I can move down a bit and up a lot. So that's good. So we've got, this is around neutral, and then we've got that and up. So there we go. We also need to open up this little area we marked earlier for where the control horn is going to go. So we've got that, and we'll just do that. And there we go. And if your wingtips are separated like this, it's best to glue them back together. Also, one more thing, you can sort of roll the edge of the Drooperon and the whatever this is together to get them to join a little bit better. Anyways, onto the ailerons. This is going to be pretty simple. We just need to get this aileron cracked open, and then we can bevel the hinge there and do a hot glue hinge, which you should also do on the Drooperons as well. Just doing a little score cut. That should break free. There we go. And I'll bevel that and do hot glue hinges on both that and the Drooperons. And bevel these to your liking so that you can get a decent amount of control through. Personally, I am a man of insane control rates, so I want to get a good bit of travel out of that. And that seems like, push that a bit farther. And of course you got loads in the up direction. So that's respectable. I like that. Now it's time for the hot glue hinges. So I'll get myself a scrap piece of foam. Okay. And we'll go and do this. There we go. And we'll do the same thing for the Drooperon. And we'll repeat that on the other side. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get the flaps working. So I'm going to bring over my little test setup here. So I've got just an ESC, a receiver, and a battery. And we're going to get that plugged in. Okay, so I have my flaps on a 3-position switch. So one of them, this is their center position, which is pretty much centered. And then this is full forward, and that's full back. So this is deployed, and then this is raised. And the reason why I have it so far back is deployed like that is so that you sort of get an overextension effect with the servo, so that if the flaps get bumped while they're deployed, they won't tend to strip the servo out. So we're gonna put them into this position, and we're just gonna let them hold there, and we're gonna make our linkages to this bit. And that looks to be about 6 inches long. Which side of this do we want to go on? I think we want to go on this side. Okay, so we've got that. We're gonna do a bend this way. Let me show you that. So just a simple bend like that. And then we're gonna go probably about that far. This isn't gonna focus that well, but you should be able to see what I'm getting at. And we're gonna put that into where the flap is. There we go. Okay. So that goes through. And we got one of these, little dog leg. So that'll sit on the outside of that flap linkage, like so. And then that'll just go into there. So what we need to do is undo this trailing edge bit. We have much more than we need here, so I'm going to trim a little bit. There we go. So we're going to raise that up. Get that pointed the right direction if I could. And get that in there. There we go. Okay. So now we want this to be preloaded so that this is sucked flush against the wing surface there. And we still have a bunch of excess, so I'm going to chop some of that off. How much? About that much. Okay. So that should be good. So that's there. And we want that to be preloaded, so we're going to push this up here a little bit while we tighten it down. So just push it up ever so slightly. Bring that to the trailing edge there. Okay, that's a bit too much. We don't want the servo to be angry at us. No, not quite. That's around perfect. So there's little to no gap here, and the servo is not angry. So, yeah. And you can sort of move these a little bit, but they snap right back into place, and the aero loads in flight won't be doing that anyways. So now let's test out how these things deploy. So that's just a little bit of movement, and that's way too much deflection. Yeah. That's pretty ridiculous. So what I think I'm going to do is probably move this to one of the inner servo arms, probably down a couple clicks. And when you're doing this in the plans, make that 1 inch instead of 3/4 of an inch from that distance there. So that right there is around, that's half throw, and that's about as much as you really want to go. Yeah, that's well into the slot effect. So yeah, I'm going to get that moved down a couple pegs and dial in the flaps for both sides, and then I'll show you it working. Alright, here's what I managed to get set up. this one's there's a bit of a gap there, but there's not much I can do about that. Of course, this one ended up shifting a bit. I was tugging on it, trying to get it aligned better, and I just made it worse, so I ended up having to make a little hole in the top of the wing just to re-glue it, and, you know, that wasn't that big of a deal. But, okay, so this is flaps up, this is half flaps, and then this is full flaps. So you can see we've got a pretty good slot in there. Now we're going to hook up the aileron and the Drooperon linkage. So we're going to start by taking this little foam cavity out here in the aileron. And we'll do that real quick. It doesn't have to be all the way out, just at least get the top paper off. And then we're going to get ourselves 2 control horns. 1, 2. This one will go in the aileron's place, right there, like so. So that works very nicely. And then we're going to have one in the Drooperon's place, but obviously this is a bit too big. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut it down. So just right behind here, give a good snip, and it should look like that. And then what we'll do is take this and push it down in there, so it's something like that. And this is the linkage setup I used. On the servo, it's on the outermost for the aileron, and on the aileron, it's on the middle position, and it's on the middle position for the Drooperon, and the second outermost on the servo. Right now, I'm going to glue this in while it's powered up and the servo is centered. And the way I'm going to determine if the surfaces are centered is I'm going to sight them. This one is going to be compared against the upper surface of the wing. And then the Drooperon, we're just going to take a straight edge and go across the wing like this. So that looks about right. You could also, I guess, use this as a straight edge as well, your square. So somewhere around there is good. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to just verify that again. Yeah, that's pretty decent. Alright. There we go. We'll let that dry. And of course, it's never a bad idea to just go ahead and run a small bead of glue along the edge of the control horns to make sure they stay in. And here are the Drooperons in action. We're about to put the finishing touches on the wing and start on the nacelles, but first we gotta run some wire through for power for them. So, what I have here is a little extension that goes from XT60 to XT30s, and it is on the XT30 end, it is 9 inches long, and on the XT60 end, it is about 8 inches long, 7 inches long actually. So, that's the sort of length of extension I'm working with here. You could probably add a bit more to this. I would add maybe 2 or 3 inches just to help you plug it in a bit easier, but this is what I had, so this is what I'm using. So what we're going to do is just unplug this real quick. Just feed this through both sides so that when we are ready to put the motor pods on, they will have power. This should be fairly easy to do. There's quite a lot of open space in there. Something like that. You could help it by shaking it a bit. Let's see, can I see them? Yes, I can. Okay. Now I gotta get some pliers. Bring these guys out here. So we got one right here coming out. Oh, I got it. Okay. And there we go. So 9 inches is approximately the well, it is pretty much the perfect length for these. To keep those in place, I'm going to tape them. If I can find my tape here, someplace, maybe. There it is. So we're just gonna tape those in place. And this one too. Make sure they don't go anywhere. Again, you can put a little dog tail, pigtail thing on this as well. Like that. Right. So now there's one last thing to do with the wing, and that's to put on the wingtips. So we're going to get our angle gauge here and our wingtips. So we got one here and one here. This one has a bit of Addendums sticker on it. There we go. And we're going to bring this wingtip over here. Set that down. And this is going to be the wingtip that goes with that. So we're going to take this, we're going to score it. And these are going to be attached rather loosely because this part moves and this part moves, so we only have this middle section right here that we can glue to. So what we're going to do, you can see I've sort of formed it there. We're going to put glue in all of these and then form it so that it matches the contour of this, the contour of that wing. So it doesn't have to be a lot of glue, just a little bit. They shouldn't be very heavy at all. Should be pretty light parts, but we want to make sure they stay in position. I'm not in frame there. There we go. Okay, that's better. So we're just going to do that and get a scrap piece of foam. Wipe that excess off. Something like that. Get all that off. Okay. And then we're going to form that to the contour of the wing here. And we're going to take this and we're just going to apply glue just to this bit right here. And just to those two little things. So here we go. That should be more than enough. And we'll take that and just keep it on there. Get it to find the right position. And get our angle gauge here. And hold that. It's not quite holding itself yet. What we can do to help that along is put a little bit of tape on there. This will just help keep it on there. And if you should ever strike a wingtip, these things should come off fairly cleanly. And then we're going to flip this upside down. And just lay a bead of glue right in that cavity there. I mean, there already is one, but we're just going to give it a little bit more, just to keep it on there. That's looking good. Nice. We're going to let that sit, bring it back to the top side here. I'm going to let that do its thing, cool down with the angle gauge on it. And of course, you're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. Alright, now we're going to get to work on our power pods. So this is going to be the power pod. We're going to remove the foam from these cavities. Just like so. And then it's going to be a B-fold. Just like that. And we are going to use the square to help us keep everything square. So, apply it to the side. Like so. Fold those up and keep them square. And of course, you're going to be doing this twice. It's looking pretty good. Next, we're going to take our firewalls and we're going to tape those to the front of the power pods. So we've got two right here. And I don't want to bother with routing the ESC wires through this hole, so we're going to go in that orientation. What we're going to do is we're going to put a bead of glue on there and then tape over the front of it. And these have no thrust angle because it's intended to use them counter-rotating props. So we'll get that on there. That looks good. And we'll get ourselves a piece of tape. And we'll go across from one end, across the face to the other. There we go. That's just a bit of extra insurance, just in case. And of course, you'll have to cut out the center bit and poke out the holes. We'll be using these two outer ones, the ones that are further apart. And we're going to repeat that with the other power pod. Now, let's see, what should we do now? Yes, okay, you're going to need these weird looking bits. These are pretty important. So we've got those, and we've got a bunch of these things. There's some that are trapezoids like this, and then there's 4 of them that are these scaling triangles like this. So the first ones we're going to put on are going to be these guys, and they're going to go on the very back of the power pod, like so. So we're just going to glue those in real quick. There we are. Okay, it's looking pretty good. And now we're going to take these and we're going to glue them approximately 1 foam board thickness, 1 sheet thickness, back from the front of the power pod, so somewhere around there. So the trapezoid goes on the bottom, like that. And try and center it up the best you can. Then the triangles go on the side like that, with the thicker part going towards the, well, the top as we're looking at it right now, but this is going to end up being the bottom. Wait. No, that is going to end up being the top. Okay. I take back what I said earlier about this being the bottom. Okay. So just 2 beads right there and right there. And put a triangle on each of those. So there's 1 there, like so. And 1 there, like so. And these are going to be the formers for the nacelle skin, which is... It has a heptagon in it, 7-sided, which I thought was pretty neat. So, you know, you normally see like 8 or 6, but nope, 7 this time. Alrighty, next I think it's about time we put in the motors. So here's what I'll be using. These are RS2205s, 2300 kV. Should do around 730 grams of thrust on 3-cell with 6x3 props-ish. You could probably go with 6x4.5s, but at that point I'd recommend a 30 amp ESC. And you could use 1806s with this, but I like power, so that's why I'm using this. So we're gonna get these bad boys screwed in here. So these I think are slightly too large for those holes actually. So we're gonna have to enlarge those somehow. And I'm thinking just have at it with this. Which might work. It sort of is. Yep, there we go. Maybe not the best method, but it got the job done. Okay. Let's use something else here. Use a proper screwdriver for this, please. I am just lazy. And these screws, they're not poking up and hitting the windings, which is good. Might be able to see that gap there. So that means that the screw isn't hitting the windings, which is what we want. So we'll give those some tightening. And these are the shortest screws that came with these motors. And we'll take this. Now we're going to have to bend this a little harder than I would like, but there we go. Okay, so that's one. Do the same thing with the other one. Okay, now we're going to go get to work on one of the nacelles. So we're going to want to remove these 2 bits of foam, and we're going to want to bevel all of these edges right here, as well as we're going to want to score all of the lines here. This blade, I can tell it's getting a bit dull, so I'm going to switch it out. And now we're going to score all of those lines. That's good. Give it a bit of a test fold here. Starting to work it. It's looking good. And that's looking good as well. Work that a bit, and it's looking good. Okay, so now we're going to get one of these. We're going to get one of these, and we're going to practice rolling this thing into shape. So you should be able to get these two edges here to meet, these two to meet, and those two to meet. And you'll notice that these right here sort of go, and they pop up into there. You should just be able to do this. You want to be very careful with this. Massage it a bit. You've got some little wrinkles here, but that's fine. Just massage it bit by bit so that it keeps holding its shape. That's starting to look like a heptagon in it. So we've got still a little bit more here to go, I think. Really get that going together. There. That's looking pretty nice. Pretty nice, pretty nice. Okay. So, what we are going to do is we are going to place this motor so that this, the back, very back of the power pod, lines up with this cut right here. So it's going to be pretty much like that. And this should be at the front of it. Like this 3/16 back should be at the very front of the power pod. This will stick out that 3/16 past the front of this nacelle. And that's okay because we're going to put a cowling on it. But something like that looks about right. So before we do that, let's get our ESCs. So we got one here. And I'm going to plug them in here and get my motor directions going. It doesn't matter which direction the motor is going, so long as they're going opposite directions, because we want our counter rotation. So this one is turning this way, and this one's going the same direction. So we're going to switch two of these. 1, 2, 1, 2. And this should now go this direction, which it is. So now we have these going opposite directions. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark it on here. So let's see, let's get a Sharpie. So this one on the top was going that way, and this one on the top was going that way. Okay. The ESCs are going to go on this upper surface right here. They're going to go right like that. So what we want to do is glue down this power pod, as we discussed earlier, just with glue on the very bottom right here, for now. Get that lined up. And we want to center this, make sure it's all good there. Take a good look at it. Try and fold stuff over it as well, make sure it's fitting nice on the sides. All that good stuff. So that's pretty good. We're going to take our ESC, glue it down like so. We'll hold that there till the glue dries. That's looking pretty good. And of course we got to get these wires here, so we'll tuck them someplace. These aren't very conducive to tucking, although that seems to work The wires are a bit of an oddball length, so they're not doing too good at tucking themselves in, but that should do the trick. And we could just leave those there for now. There's no exposed gold contacts there, so we're good. So we're going to have it do something like that. Something similar to that. And the bottom of this power pod, or the top of it, depending on how you look at it, will be flat. So we can use the table as our friend here. And it's going to look something similar to that. In fact, pretty much exactly like that. So, what we're going to do first, put glue here, 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 and a little bit here. And we're going to get that going up, like that. And we're also going to put some glue in here. And that's going to be it. So let's go ahead and do that. So some glue in there. Some glue in here. And here. And here. And there. And a little bit across the top here. And we're going to take this and fold it up over. And then bring these two close, make them touch, and you should have a piece of tape ready before you do this. So you can tape those where they are. Beautiful. Okay. And then make sure these side bits here get tucked in like so. And let that do its thing. Now we're going to get these dudes together. So it's the same process, just a bead of glue here, and I'm going to get the tape beforehand. That's a smart man. So we're going to need about that much. Get the glue in there. Okay. And get those going together. Ouch. That hurt a bit. And get the tape on there. And there we go. Very nice. And you shouldn't need to tape or glue that, but I'm going to do it anyways, just to minimize the number of exposed seams. So there we go. A little bit of extra tape. And these wires will do their own thing. We'll get this last bit here all done. Same process as before. Easy peasy. Get your piece of tape first, though. There we go. Okay. Take that. Don't burn your fingers. Okay. Got some excess here. I'm gonna have to get off. There we go. Get that lined up. And across it goes. Like so. And there you go. There's one partially completed motor pod. So now, what we need to do is get one of these bad boys, and you're going to take the paper off of this. And fold on the score cuts, by the way. So just do that real quick before you take the paper off, just so you know where they are. Like so. And then you're just going to bevel the end of one of these, just to make it join a bit easier, better. And then you're going to work this a little bit, just sort of get it accepting to that shape. And then you are going to glue this and tape it. So glue it and tape it like this. And put the tape on. There we go. Glued and taped. Take off the excess glue. Take off the excess tape. Okay. There we go. Now we are going to form this a little bit more before we attach it. So you can see it's sort of lopsided, so we're going to try and get it a bit better looking. And I'm thinking that looks fairly decent. So I'm going to bring this thing over. And those wires are a little bit in the way there. I'm going to try and tuck them out of the way. I'm being pretty hard with them. It shouldn't be that difficult. Okay. So we're going to try and fit this on real quick. It's looking like it's not quite going to, which is okay. So what we're going to do here as well is we're going to bevel the back of this a little bit, just so it sits flat. Go all the way around. I think I just stabbed myself again. Right under the Band-Aid too. Well, that's convenient. If anything, you want to bias this so that the highest point, effectively, when you're looking at it like this, is on the outside, so that it forms a clean seam. So it's getting there. It's almost nearly there. We're just going to want to make a little cutout for these wires that seem to be in our way, like so. And this little seam is going to go on the bottom, like this. So that's looking pretty good. Just push it in a little bit where those wires are. Motor spins freely. I think we're ready to put that on. So what we're going to do is just a dot in each corner. It's a very small dot. So just one of those, one of those, one of those. And this means if you ever need to get the cowling off to change your propeller or anything, it's fairly easy to do. Or it's easier than if you had glued the entire thing on. Okay, so I'm just gonna go around and line up the seams real quick. What we're also gonna do is, since we know that this one is that direction, we're gonna mark this one this direction. And this will be under the wing, so you won't see it. Repeat that process for the other motor pod. Okay, now it's time to install the power pods onto the wing itself. You're going to need some string for this, or, I mean, you could torture yourself, but you're probably going to want some string for this. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the string, you're going to cut about a foot of it. So we'll go, well, maybe a bit longer than a foot. That should be good. And you're going to thread it through here to there, and from here to here. So I got some magnets here, and we're going to use these as weights. Now I don't think those should stick to the wires or anything in them, which is right. So we're going to just drop this through. There we go. Okay. Now I could just stick something down there that's magnetic, and I should be able to bring those up pretty easily. Let's do that. There we go. Come on out. There we go. Alright. So we got one of these run. Now I'm going to run the other one. Okay, so now we have two strings there, and these are going to be used to pull the ESC signal wires through. This engine here, it's turning the prop this direction, so it's trying to spin the wing this direction. So if that motor fails, it's going to try and lift up that dead motor, and that's what we want. So this one's going to be on this side. So the arrows, by the way, they point in. So the propellers go out on the bottom and in on the top. That's what we want, I think. So for these, we're going to plug these in right here. Okay, this right here is cheap insurance. Just put a zip tie through there, and through there, and then lock it down. And that'll lock this connector in place and make sure that you have to cut the zip tie for it to come undone, so it won't come undone in flight. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to tie this around that. Give it a double knot for good measure. Okay. I'm going to start pulling on that a little bit. Feed that down through there. We want to pull it just so we have some wiggle room here with this. That's enough. Okay, now we've got this one. So we're going to go gonna pan you a bit this way. And we're gonna tie this one around this one. And we're gonna pull this one through. Like so. If I could. There we go. Okay. So now I've got these two power rods. Now, how the heck do we know where to line them up? Well, there are marks right here, and at the rear, right here, and right there that we poked through from earlier. So we're gonna line the edges of this up with those, and those bits up with those, as we glue them on. And for the gluing, what we're gonna do, cover this little area right here, as well as those bits. And then that should be good. You can help it out a bit by pushing through some of those wires. Okay. Some there too. Okay. Let's line this up. So we got one there, one there. So it goes right there, down, and there we go. Okay. Just make sure that stays there, because this is a pretty important connection, you know. Wouldn't want your motors to be falling off now, would you? So now I can do the same thing on the other side. And what we're going to do is we are going to run another bead of glue on here just for good measure, because it can't hurt, and it's one of the more critical connections. These are our ailerons. These go channel 2. I have 2 ESCs here. They each have a 3 amp BEC. Now there's going to be 6 servos on this airplane, so I think a 3 amp BEC, it's a bit marginal. So what I'm going to do, since you can't, well, it's not recommended to connect both BECs in parallel, is I'm going to use one BEC to power the wing and one to power the receiver and the tail. So how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to disconnect the positive of the ESC that I want to power the wing, which is going to be this one, and I'm going to run that separately to anything that's on the wing. So actually, I'm going to disconnect this positive and connect it to both of those positives, and then I'm just going to plug this positive straight into the receiver. So that's how that's going to work. And this will be motor number 5, because that's the easiest to get to on the receiver. There we go. And then this will be motor at number 1. Okay, here's a little bit on how to get these pins out of the connectors. You just go in here, you reach under the pin of the connector, so you sort of go like that, and then lift that little plastic bit up right there, and then you would be able to pull it out, except that I haven't sufficiently isolated these yet. I haven't gotten them, peeled them apart enough to where I can pull on them. Okay, there we go. So now I can pull on these individually. So we're going to go into the center pin, isolate the positive, there it is. We just do that for the flaps and for that first ESC. Here's what I came up with for the power distribution. It's just one of those little headers with just all the leads common together. And I'll plug those into it and hot glue it and tape it so they won't ever be able to come out. And I'll just stick that down somewhere. So that's all there is to that. It's just tucked way down in there. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it. And then these right here are going to be for the rudder and the elevator. And you can see that they've got a little tab on here, which is nice because it ensures that you can plug them and unplug them without having to worry about them undoing themselves automatically. So these are going to go back towards that direction, and the elevator and the rudder will plug into those when you plug in the wing. And some of the finishing touches here, I just labeled these as elevator and rudder and tied them down with some hot glue and a bit of tape there. Alright, let's test this out. So we have ailerons and drooperons. and flaps. And we should have throttle. So that's both of them together. And then I think if I toggle differential thrust here, which one was it that I have it on? That one, yeah. Very nice. So that's working quite well. Actually, we're not quite done yet. I forgot these little bits. I've already taken the paper off the outsides and the middle bits out, and we're gonna just put a little bit of glue on here and fold it over. This is a C-fold. So it should end up as something like that. And what we're gonna do here, you can see this bit is a bit stepped. What we're gonna do is just bevel that step off. So like this. Perfect. And do the same thing with the other one. So now we're gonna glue these onto the nacelles. So this one's gonna go here because you can see the angle of this matches the wing. And we're just gonna sort of eyeball it in the center and glue it on there. So that looks about right. Get a little bit of glue on there. Doesn't have to be absolute gobs. And we're just gonna glue that on there. This just adds a bit of visual flair, you know. Makes it look like the motors are being supported by some sort of pylon or something. There we go. And we'll do that for the next one. And now we can call the wing complete. Alright, now we're going to get to work on the fuselage. So first we're going to want to remove these cavities right here. So these two, as well as these two. But before we do that, we want to poke these little holes out. These will be where the landing gear wires go later. So we'll just poke those through to the other side. And then we can remove the foam from these cavities. You can also peel the paper off of these. I'm going to extend these lines so that it includes this little triangle. And we'll take that out as well. Okay, the next thing we're going to want to do is peel the paper off of these four little bits right here. And this will just help them bend better when we curve them. And while we're here, we're also going to want to take our landing gear wire. This is 1/8 inch, but you could also use 5/32 depending on the internal diameter of your wheels. But we're just going to score this right here. And you want to get this pretty well scored, so go at it at an angle, anything you need to, so that you should be able to pop up one of these side plates and basically slide this in through that little hole you created earlier. And it should just slide into it like that. So that's what we're going to do later, but for now, we're going to leave that alone. So now seems like a good time to get these little bits laid down, so they're going to be a C-fold. So they go like that. These are just doublers to clean up the seam here so that it doesn't fray when the wing is on top of it, as well as to just provide some doubling for supporting the wing. So we're going to glue those down. And now there's some other holes you can poke, so those are going to be these four right here. And these are for the barbecue skewers that will pass through sides, and those will be used to hold the wing on. And now, if you do have some method of reinforcing these holes, now is the time to do that. So I have these little bits which have been reclaimed from past craft that I've built. These are pieces of FR4, basically fiberglass material, and I've drilled a hole through them that's about the size of a barbecue skewer. If you don't have something like this, you could use, say, a piece of plastic from some sort of blister container, some old credit card or gift card or something. Just cut out little squares or circles and drill a hole through the center. And what this will do is it'll keep the foam from tearing out over time as the barbecue skewers are stressed. So what we're going to do is we're going to line those up with those holes, and we're just going to glue them down. If you don't have these, that's fine, because we will be adding additional foam reinforcement to this, but it's never a bad thing to have a bit of extra on there. Now, just to make extra sure that those stay in place, I've got these little circles here. So what you can do is punch out the center of these. And glue these down on top of that. Now, lining the hole up is going to be a bit difficult, so what you can do is you can stick something through from the other side, like so, and slide this down on top of it while you're gluing it. That'll help it stay in place. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bevel the outside edges of these little triangle bits. And what this is going to do is it's going to help make a smooth seam where they join to the fuselage. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start to curl these up like this. And just form them like so. And when you're looking top down on this, what you should see is you want to see this line right here start to line up with this line. So just take your time with these, go slow. The slower you go, the less of a chance you have of making wrinkles in it. And just slowly sort of work it until it wants to hold its shape. We're going to want to do this for all four of those. And these will end up being conical, so you should focus, your folds should go like that in terms of their line. So here I'm folding along this line right here, and then out here I'm trying to fold along this line. But the point is that all of those lines of folds converge to this point right here. That's starting to look good, so now we'll get to work on some of the formers we'll need. So we'll need these two for now, and of course you want to remove this foam cavity right here. And with this one, you can peel off the paper on both sides. And glue it together with a C-fold. And you want to make sure that both of these line up pretty well, because this will be used to align those little triangle bits that we folded earlier with the rest of the lower fuselage skin. You also want these two right here. Now that we have this, what we're going to do is bring these up on top of that bottom plate. So doing an A-fold basically on these. And we're going to glue those down and make sure that they're square. So take our bead of glue, run it above that, on top of it, bring it up, set it there, get our square, make sure that stays square. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to glue both of these right on that line right here and right there. So put glue on the bottom here and up on the side, or just put it on the part here. Like so. That looks good. So we'll hold that. Wait for this to dry. Of course, the next step is going to be A-folding this thing up on top of the bottom plate and having it rest against the side plates. So we're going to put a bead of glue on the side plates, across the bottom here, and up the other side plate, and fold this thing up. I'm going to hold it there, make sure it stays square. One important thing to do here is to sight how these are against each other. So you want this line right here to line up with that. You don't want them to be one higher than the other or the low, because that'll introduce twist into the fuselage. So take a good look at that, make sure they're pretty good, and give it a bit of a twist if you need to. Now that that's done, we're going to move on to this back area right here. So these are going to end up basically going upwards and forming a nice seam right there. And so that can be helped out with some tape. So we'll get a length about that much. And you want to practice gluing it in, and then put some glue on it and tape it. Like so. So we got our tape. Put our tape on here. And get that seam nice and good. Work from this point back here to this point up here. And tape it down. Take off any excess on the inside. And you're going to want to do that for the other side as well. Actually, we won't be needing this former, I sort of lied there. Once that's done, you can take this former and drop it down in the rear here. So it should slide just like so. And you want to line these 2 points up with that line and the top of this. So we'll get that done. And you also want this little servo cutout, connector cutout, to be towards the top. And that'll allow us to route our wires from the rear of the airplane to the front. So just slide that down in. And when you're doing this, leave it a little bit recessed from the front of the skin. Just a tiny little bit, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, not that much. But there should be some sort of recess between this and this. The former should be further in than the skin comes out. Now what we can do is crack this open here, peel off the paper, and get our X-Acto blade wherever it may be. Bevel this edge here, like so. Then take this, and we're going to form this so that it goes over that former and joins at the other side, which should look something like this. You might have to pull it a bit to get it to join up here, which can also be helped by knocking down the high points on the surface with your thumb a bit. So there we go. It's looking pretty good. That's just a bit short of joining. So we'll walk this along the surface very slowly. And there we go, it joins pretty much perfectly. So, we're going to take our glue. Before we do that, hold on, let's get ourselves a piece of tape. There we go. Put the piece of tape there, and get our glue in. So across that side bit, all along the former. And in here if you'd like as well. And again, you want this to be slightly proud of the former. There we go. Just gotta massage it a bit. Get it into place. That's looking good. Now, of course, we're going to get these to join up to here. So get a piece of tape ready. Glue on. Get a piece of tape on. And work the joint. And of course do that on the other side as well. So now we're going to need this double former right here. What we're going to do is we're basically just going to get this thing right in there, and we're going to leave it so that that extra 1/16 of an inch comes over like that. And this will allow us to form the lower fuselage skin right here. So to glue that in, we're basically gonna just put a couple bits of glue on here. So take it along here, like so. And then we're just gonna slide that in from this direction, like that. So now that's in there. Just gotta make sure it's positioned properly, so that we have that 1/16 inch step right here, and push it all the way towards the bottom here. Again, these little corners here should line up with these edges. And remove any excess glue from this gap here, because that'll prevent the skin from seating properly. Now what we can do is crack this back and peel off the paper here. And we could start to form that in the same way that we did the back there. So just sort of do one of these. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now, before we do that, we're actually going to put the bottom skin on. So there's a hole in here in this little marking, so we're going to want the hole to be towards the front. You could also punch that hole, like, and this will be for the nose gear when we install that. So again, you can peel this. And for this one, what you're going to want to do is take it over the edge of a table. Just work it back and forth like this. That's starting to get pretty close to the shape we want. I call that pretty much good. pretty close to what we want it to be. So now we could take this, flip it like this, and we're gonna, before we do that actually, we're gonna bevel both these sides right here. There we go. So I'm going to take this, and with the little hole towards the front, we're going to get that there and tape it on. So, okay, and I'm going to work from here to there. Should be close. That looks good. Okay. Now what we're going to do, just going to roll this over that former up here and glue it to the other side and tape it there as well. You could also add a little bit of glue in here if you'd like. Okay. Just a little bit of glue. And a little bit of glue. And you also want to put some on this former right here as well. And we'll take it. And you're going to want to start at the former end when joining the two and move towards the nose end. And that's looking pretty good. Now you're going to notice that these are actually splayed out a little bit. And that's because the bottom skin isn't fully curved up here, which is fine for now. So what we're going to do is going to take this. Yoink. We have this piece right here. So this is going to sit down like this. And we could poke out the hole in that as well. That's going to be there. So it's going to sit right in there, like so. And what you're going to want to do here, if you do have it, these right here are little bits that only control horn wire can go through right here. And this is what I'm going to be using for keeping the nose gear in place. If you don't have that, that's fine. You could probably just use the foam, but this will add a bit more durability. So what I'm going to do, glue this down right here. Like that. Line the hole up. Make sure it's centered-ish. And then I'm going to glue one of these on top of that. And now we're going to want this piece and this piece. So with this piece, obviously we're going to have it slotted around that, but we're going to curl it so that the side pieces are where they need to be. Glue. And we want this one to be slightly recessed as well. So, do that. Okay, looking good. We want to just form that as tight as possible to that former. Make sure it's all good. And then we'll wait for that to dry. That's looking good. So now this should be the correct radius for this former, and it is. So we're going to drop that one in on the very back of this little guy right here. So that's just going to go right in there like that. And now we have this piece right here, and it also has a hole in it, so you know what to do with that. And then again, since I have this piece right here, I'm going to glue that onto there. And then we're going to glue this piece on top of both of those pieces. So just a line of glue there, just a line of glue there. This is the entirety of the nose gear mount. And you should get that roughly centered. It's not going to matter too much. So now we're almost done. We're getting there. We're going to want to take this piece and glue it in such that these points right here are on these two lines. And there's marks in the fuselage here where to do that. So we're going to take that, just 2 little bits of glue, and put that in. Just like that. Make sure it lines up, and we're chilling. While we're waiting for that to dry, we bevel this edge right here. And get our piece of tape ready for the other side. Now what we're going to do is roll this over both of those formers and join the edge there. So you're going to need to put glue on both of the formers as well as that edge. And you can put a little bit in here if you'd like as well. And roll it over the top. Now be very gentle with this former because, again, it's only being held by a couple pieces of glue. Make sure to line this up with that so it's not askew. And bring it down the line. That leaves a decently clean seam there. It is time for landing gear. I've got my 2 nose wheels. You could do 1 or 2. These are a bit thin, so I went with 2 of them. These you want them to be 1 to approximately 1 1¼ inches. You're also going to want 4 main wheels. So I happen to get 2 sets of Drooperon 2.5-inch wheels. These are the ultralight wheels, so they're super light. And the hobby shop only had 1 of the particular kind I wanted in stock, so I had to get the diamond tread pattern one. So they're sort of mismatched. I'll figure out how I'll deal with those. But you could do 2 2¼ inch wheels as well. Maybe even 2-inch wheels. I do have some 2-inch wheels, but for reasons that you'll see later, you probably want to stick with 2.25s or 2.5-inch wheels. So with that said, we've got those, and we're going to need these pieces now. So these are the gear pants, and these are the little gear mounting strips. So yeah, let's get started here. Alright, the first thing you're going to want to do is measure these to 7 1/8 inch, so 7.125 inches, and cut those to length. There's 2. So we've got both of those cut to length. Now what we need to do is take this and pass them through here. So poke it in one end, like so, and then look through here, and send it through, being careful not to make it puncture the lower surface. You'll have to twist it a bit here as it pushes foam out of the way and such. Basically, we're embedding this inside the that lower skin there. And we're going to get that through and do the next one. You can see I broke through a little bit here on the bottom. That's fine. We'll put some tape over that. It'll be a-okay. Okay, that one's also through. And I also broke through a bit on that one, but that's okay. So we're going to get our tape. Just put some tape over that. It's not that big of a deal. I think we're going to aim for 1 5/16 on each side, if I remember correctly. So that's a bit more this way. 5/16. 1 5/16 about. So, I mean, more realistically, you should just find the midpoint so that both of these lengths on each side are equal. So now that those are in, what we can do is just put a little bead of glue right around here. What that'll do is it'll sort of lock these in place side to side, as well as act as a little spacer for the wheels when we put these on. So I'm just going to get a bit of glue and I'll spread it around like that. And we're going to do that on all 4 of these areas. Like so. Okay. That's looking good. And we'll wait for that to dry. Now that it's pretty much dried, we can put our tires on. and then just run a bead of hot glue around the axle to keep those in place. This will accommodate up to about 1 1/8 inch width tires, and these are a bit less than an inch. And if any hot glue touches the wheel hub, you can just rotate it like this to keep it from doing anything too harmful, like getting it into the wheel and such. So that's looking pretty good. You can go to the other side. And then we're going to take these strips right here, and we're going to glue them right on top of the axles. But the important thing is we don't want to glue the axle in place, so we're not going to glue in the center. We're only going to put glue on the sides of this, and then we'll put that down in there. So we'll take these, put a bead of glue just on the very side of those, not in the center. And then we'll glue them down, centered over those, like so. So that's one. And the whole point of this is, if you need to, you should be able to get the axles out fairly easily. If for whatever reason you wanted to change the axles and or swap wheels, it should be pretty easy. And they don't need to be glued in there because they have a decent friction fit. Just like that, easy as. So those are the wheels. We're gonna hold off on the wheel pants for now and focus on the nose gear. So this is just your standard control horn rod. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a bend here, like that, and then we're gonna put the wheels on here. So I have 2 of these, so there we go. And then we're gonna bend it up on the side of the wheels here so that the wheels are locked in place. Like that. So now the wheels are captive. They're spinning freely. That's what that looks like. And then we're going to go over the top of the wheels here, a slight dog leg, and center it up over the wheels with another slight dog leg. So we've got something that looks like this. In fact, I want to make that a bit sharper. So I'm going to straighten this back out, like so. Make that dog leg sharper towards the center. And by sharper, I mean closer to the top of the wheel, because we're trying to save a bit of space here. There we go. And then find approximately the center, twist that up. So now we've got something that looks like that. So the wheels are just on there, they're chilling. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add some sort of rake angle to it. What this will do is it'll help the wheel caster on the ground. So we're going to take it and we're going to bend this top piece back like this, such that it's now effectively in front of the tire right there. So when it makes it act like a caster wheel, so it'll go like this on the ground basically. So, and then if you turned, it would switch back around like that. That's the idea, at least. Yeah, that's a bit too much, actually. We'll go about that much, and then, again, verify that your angles here are correct. So we want this to be straight up and down. We want it to be perpendicular to the axle, approximately. There we go. And now we're going to poke this to the bottom and try and get it through both of those plates that I installed in there. There we go. Okay, so that's through now. It spins rather freely. That's good. So now what we want to do is we want to prevent this from going up and down, basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a bead of glue on top of here and a bead of glue on the bottom of here to keep it from doing that. And we're going to put a bead of glue on there. And we're just going to let that dry. And you could also cut this top part off here. And now we want to give it the up stop so that it won't go like into there and then these wheels sort of jam on the fuselage. So what we're going to do for that is do the same thing we did, just right here on the outside of it. Just a little squirt of glue. That'll be good. And just rotate that a bit. Okay, that's pretty much solidified there. So now this is almost done. You can see it casters very nicely. So now, last thing we need to do to finish the fuselage is do the wheel pants. So to do the wheel pants, we're going to start with removing these bits of foam right here. The next thing we can do is to remove foam from these, and I think that's just it. If you wanted to remove some foam from this, and this, and this, and this, you could, and that would save you a bit more weight, but it's not going to make that much of a difference anyways. I'm going to crack those open as well. And we're going to curve just this part right here. So do this. Only that part, not this part. I'm going to do that for all 4 of them. And that, of course, is going to match this curve right here. And now what we're going to need to do is open these up and bevel both of these edges on all of them. There we go. And these should do something like that. You can see how this is going to turn out. Okay, and then we're going to pop these up here so that they're not in the way when we do the next step. We're also going to bevel these, or crease these inwards a bit. And now we're going to do basically an A-fold of this part on top of that part, like that. So we're going to put down our bead of glue, do our A-fold, and we're going to make sure that's square. Wait until it dries. And now, of course, you can expect what we're going to do. We're going to put glue on this and bring these over like that. So something like that. Let's get that done. And we can lay that there, as well as roll it like this, and that'll help get that into where it needs to be. You want to make sure that seam is as tight as it can be. And you're going to repeat this 4 times. And these things are identical, so there is not a left or a right. Now we're going to install the wheel pants on the fuselage. It's really simple. You just need to line up these 2 lines right here with these lines right here and glue it down. So it's going to be something like that. And of course you want to make sure that it's forward and aft so that there's space for both wheels here. So what I'm going to do, since I want these to be fairly removable in case I want to change tires in the future, so I'm just going to put a bead of glue just a couple dots here, so like a dot here, dot here, dot here, dot here, and then just a couple dots along here. Nothing too serious, you know. These don't have to be on super strong. That looks good. So we're going to get this thing on there, just like so. And it looks like it's on there. And both of our wheels spin free. In fact, this one's rubbing a bit on the fuselage, so I'm going to add a bit more glue in there just to keep it from doing that. That's much better. And none of these here have that problem. And of course, you're going to repeat this on the other side. And there you go. That is pretty much a completed fuselage right there. Now we're going to start work on the empennage, and for that you'll need these 5 pieces right here. You'll also want to cut out these 2 holes, or these 3 holes rather, and this little cavity right here. And now you're going to want to peel the paper off these 2 triangles. As well as this piece right here. And this piece right here. So now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start bending these parts right here. The way we're going to do this is we're just going to start with this, work our way along. So it'll be something like that. And we want to get this to where these two side plates are parallel when I'm not even holding it. So we want to crease these quite a lot. Get them bent. Very nice. This can also be helped by putting it over the corner of a table, going like this. That'll just crease the foam, allow you to bend it easier. Increase the foam a bit there. That's fine. You won't see that much, hopefully. We'll just work it back and forth like this. That's looking pretty good. So we're going to repeat that same process on the other side. When you think you've got it to a satisfactory place where when you fold this up, that curve is pretty nice, then what you're going to want to do is get this former, and with this little bit down, you're going to glue it in to the front here. You want to make sure that these corners line up with these lines here on both sides, and that the former is a little bit recessed back into there, maybe around 1/16 of an inch, and that'll just clean up the seams between the parts when we glue them all together. So we're going to get some tape, and just to help this along, I'm going to put it across here. We should be able to drop the former in there eventually. This is right around the perfect length. In fact, it'll have to be a bit tighter there, but you can see what's going on there. So what we're going to do is just glue in the bottom first and get that curve all good. Again, we're taking it slow. So we're going to get that bottom part in there, center it up, bring those up, make sure it's just a little bit back there. Close any gaps there might be, like here. So now what we're going to do, we're going to clear off a corner of our table for this next step. And we're going to lay this flat right here. So the former's overhanging on one end, this bit is overhanging on the other. We're going to take our square. And when we glue this, we're going to check for squareness on both sides. And that'll make sure that there's no twist. So we're going to take some tape here just to hold these close together. Like so. And we're going to take this off for now. We're going to put glue down the sides of these and clamp that together with this. And then we're going to put it on there and check for squareness and tweak it around until it is square on both sides. And that's holding good there. And we'll take it upside down. And make sure that this thing is square on both sides. And now is a good time to fold this little tab over. It's just going to go above that plate right there. Like so. Okay, so this thing is going to be installed. There's markings on the fuselage, you can see. Yeah, so there's markings right there and right there. And it is going to sit just on the bottom of where that elevator servo hole is. So just like that is what it's going to look like. And up like that on that side. So we will go ahead and glue that in. Get that oriented properly. And that is looking good right there. Now I don't know if you could see, but we've got a little bit of a twist going on. This is a bit of an angle like that. So we're gonna just counter twist it a little bit while that glue is drying. That should help it. And you can also run a reinforcing bead of glue on this as well. Wouldn't hurt. could also take the paper off of this side of these. And start to curve them a little. And you can take those and tape them in place, like so. Now we're going to get this big old thing, and we're going to do the same process that we did with the other one. So we're just going to do something like this. And again, take your time with this, because it is very important to get this thing right. Do this with it. So that's starting to look like something. We could sort of compare that against the existing bend right there to see that it's pretty close, but it's still a bit wide. So we got a ways to go. That's feeling very good, very pliable. And this is creased a little bit, but that's okay, because it's just going to be on the underside of the tail. You're not going to see it that often. Not going to see it up close that often, at least. So this is going to end up going here. And that is looking very nice. What do you say so myself? So what we're going to do is we're just going to bevel these edges. And there we go. So got two of these beveled. That's nice. Missed a bit on the edge here. Cut off a bit of the corner there, but that's fine. Gonna take this one off. Let's check. Do we have any twist? I think we have still a little bit in there. Yeah, we do. Okay. So we'll keep that in mind. So we're gonna have to shimmy this a bit this way. In fact, we could help that out with this little tail piece here. So I could undo this little bit of tape here real quick. And we're going to need to shimmy it this way, so this one's going to be higher than that one for now. And that'll just apply a little bit of torque in the desired direction to get that thing back to straight. So we're going to install this now. So we're going to line up that leading edge. We're going to get a big strip of tape, go all the way down there. And that's about good. And we're going to lay it down on this. I'm going to put this down into there. Line it up properly. So that looks fairly decent. It's not half bad. I'll take that any day of the week. And now, we'll flip this over to the other side, and we're gonna bring it over the top here. We're gonna put glue on there, and we're gonna tape it down on this side as well. And we're gonna go across here, from here to there, and another one on here. Okay. So we're gonna bring this down, and we're gonna start up here and work our way back. So that's joined very nicely, and we're just gonna follow that back. Like so. Okay. There we go. Now that piece is on. We check, make sure we're not warped, and the warping has been reduced. So we'll let that dry where it is currently while we work on preparing this piece. So this one, we're going to do the same thing, and we're just going to do one of these. Just going to go like that, bend it a bunch, get it nice and rolled up, but not before we get our servos in there. This right here is going to be the rudder servo. These are 10 inches long with a Z-bend on the end. And what I'll have to do is get that in there somehow. So the rudder servo goes upside down in there. So luckily we still have this like this, so we can just open these and get that rudder servo in there like this. And that will go right there. But we've got to get these Z-bends in first, so these will go through those little holes there. And they'll be on the underside of the servo. So one like that. Okay. Like that. And we'll pull this wire through. And we will put a little drop of glue on the servo from here. Push it down in. On the back side, get some glue on the sides there. We'll take this wire and push it through there. Push in there and grab it. And there it goes. And then this wire right here, you're going to want to route it off to the side of the servo. You can glue that in place there so that it doesn't interfere with the elevator when the horizontal tail goes on top. And you could route this through that little servo cutout that we made earlier. So that's one. And here's our elevator servo. This is going to go in right here with the control horn facing upwards towards the elevator. So just put that in there, pull it through. So I'm going to start it, then we're going to look inside here. And we're going to put a drop of glue just right behind that elevator there. And that'll just hold it to that surface. And we're going to put this wire down there as well. Shove the wire through, if I could. There it goes. And we're going to put 2 bits of glue underneath there and push that in. Like so. And make sure that wire gets trapped in the glue blob so that it doesn't interfere with the rudder servo. So the elevator servo wire is out of the way. And again, we'll take that elevator servo wire and route it through our little hole there. And we could also add a couple reinforcement beads of glue to the elevator. Like this. Just to keep it in there. While we're at it, if you take a look down inside here, I'm just going to glue down these servo connectors to the upper wing skin there, or the upper empennage skin. And next, it's time to finish up this little back bit here. So we're going to recombine these now at the proper height relative to each other. And we've got this little bit here. Now what we're going to want to do is bevel this, this, and this, and we're going to especially want to bevel that so that it's all flat and it'll lie down properly once we put it on there. That's a big bevel. Something like that is what you should be looking at. And then this is going to go right there. So we'll take this, we'll bend this a bit to better fit that form. Something like that. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. So now we're going to just glue this down here. That's looking pretty good. So we'll hold that there until it dries. And of course, once we're done, we can go ahead and trim the excess off here. That is our empennage, more or less complete. Alright, now we're going to start working on the tail. As you can see here, I've taken a barbecue skewer and I've just hollowed out this area right here. And I've inset it into it. And what we're going to do is just glue that barbecue skewer in and then put a piece of tape over it. So that's what I'm going to do here. And what this will do is it'll just stiffen up the horizontal tail because it is so long. And it's only a single sheet of foam as opposed to 2. So we'll do that. And then we'll get our piece of tape. That looks about long enough. We'll start from this end and go to the other one. And there we go. Our elevator is now reinforced. And of course, the next step is to open up this hinge right here. And do a bevel on the control surface side. 45 degrees. There we go. And of course, you could reinforce it with some hot glue. And of course, you're also going to want to dig out a little bit of the elevator control horn section. And then, what you're going to do, let's take this and line it up. And we're going to install the elevator next. We're going to look at this here. And you're going to notice that this thing has two little marks right here and right here. And those are going to line up right here and right here. So now you're going to glue the horizontal stabilizer on. You're going to put a bit of glue on the top of the servo there. And we're going to, I swear I had another glue stick, but apparently not. So we're going to put some glue on there. And then I'm going to get something to help me push this glue through, and we're going to go through here. There we go. And we'll take this and put it on there. And I'm going to line up those marks. Those marks are now lined up, and of course I'm going to bump it against the this edge up here. And hold it there. Be careful not to poke your eyes or anything with these. These are a bit of a hazard. And of course, we're going to want to run a little reinforcing bead along these sides here. Where we get to take our vertical stabilizers here, and we get to install them. So what we're going to do here is we're going to cut on this line right here. And we're going to cut out this area right here. And then, of course, we're going to score and break this and bevel it on the surface side. And we can hot glue reinforce that later. And we're also going to dig out this cavity right here. So we're going to do that for both of these. And we're going to take these and install them on the horizontal stabilizer. So we're going to pass this wire through that little slot at the bottom. And these just pop onto the ends, just like that. So we're going to put some glue in there and glue them on square. That one went a bit too far, I accidentally pushed that through. It's no big deal. Could just take that, maybe a bit farther back. And you want to hold it there until it dries. And of course you can reinforce this just with a little bead of glue in here. So now that you've got that done, what you're going to want to do is find where the control horn crosses the vertical stabilizer and put just a mark in the very middle of it. And of course make sure your vertical stabilizer, your rudder servo is centered before you do this. Then you can take both of these back out and then do an upwards Z-bend on those. There we go. So we've got, this is what that looks like. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take these right here, these control horns, and we're going to have the thicker part facing up, and I'm going to put it in, I think I'm going to go for the innermost hole on this. Give myself a decent amount of throw. And then what we'll do is take that and stick it through here. And then we're going to want to glue this into that slot right there. So that's going to look something like that. And we want the center of that servo horn right there to be on the center line of this rudder, or of the hinge. So we're going to push it in like that. And so we want it somewhere around there, if you could see that. And when we glue this in, we want to keep this rudder centered because our servo is centered. So that's what we're going to do now. Going to take that back out. Going to get some glue, squirt it in there. going to take this and get it in there without burning ourselves too much. Push that back so that it's on the hinge line there. And then hold it so that it's flat here. And you could use a straight edge of sorts to do that for you. We want to do this on both sides. We could add a little bit extra glue on both sides just to make sure it's really in there. And while that's cooling, we want to keep it flat. So not like that, but like that while it's cooling. And we want to repeat that for both sides. And to keep those linkages from flexing too much, we're going to take some zip ties, put them around here, and zip them tight. Then chop off a bit of this, and poke them down into the foam. And that'll just keep the linkage from moving too much. And we'll glue those down into the foam as well. And if it isn't already evident, I'm just eyeballing where these go. Now we can start on the elevator linkage. And I'm going to go for the outermost control horn on the elevator. So this is what that looks like. And you can verify that this is flat with a straight edge. And of course we can reinforce that with the bead glue on both sides. And that's the complete empennage tail section. Now we're going to join these things together. So first we're going to take our servo extensions. These ones right here are they're 18 inches approximately, so I think 90 centimeters. Well, that's not right, 45 centimeters? I don't know. So I'll pass those through. And then it should be just as simple as gluing that bulkhead on. Gluing the two bulkheads onto each other and biasing a little bit of glue out towards the skin just to join those as well. And what we'll also want to do is put some sort of straight edge across the wing right here and sight that against the horizontal stabilizer to make sure that it's in line. So we'll go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do here is basically cover this thing entirely in glue. So we're going to first start by going around the outside. And then we're going to do another one on the inside here. That should be enough for what we're trying to do here. So we're going to get that together, get everything lined up on that side, on that side. Looking good. Just hold that there. In fact, I think we're going to get a bit more glue in there. Let's see. Yeah, we're going to get some more glue in there. Along the very outside to dry the skins. This is a pretty messy process. Alright, let's give it another shot. That's looking good. Line that up. Line that up. It's looking good. Got a bit of glue squeezing out there. Okay. I'm pulling on the wires here to keep it in there. And it looks like we're a bit off, so we need to rotate it this way a little bit. And that's pretty much right on, right there. So we've got everything in there. We're just going to hold these two together until they dry. Do this for a good while, make sure it really is dry. Because this is the joint you do not want failing. I strengthened it up a bit more by just dripping some glue between both of these bulkheads right here on the bottom and the top. That should help it in pitch. Also, you'll notice one of the design aspects of this craft is that this comes very close to hitting the bottom here, and this is why I recommend the 2.5 or 2.25 inch wheels. These are 2.5s right here. It gives you just enough clearance. I also cut these two barbecue skewers to 4.5 inches, which is the width of the fuselage. And these will just go through right here and to the other side. And these will be what the rubber band's attached to internally. So that's one cool thing about this craft. There's no externally visible rubber bands, or at least there shouldn't be, because we'll have a nice cover that'll go over this. And we'll build that after we build the nose. Alright, let's get started with the nose. Here's all the bits you'll need. And you'll need to remove this little cavity right here. And then this right here is going to be an A-fold, so this will go above that, like so. And then right here at the corners, you'll see they overhang a bit, so we'll bevel those off. Likewise, we're also going to want to bevel this top edge slightly. The reason for all this, so that this skin right here, which we're going to peel off, is going to be behind there, and this skin right here, which we're going to peel off, fit nicely. So this one's going to go right here, so we need to take this. What we're going to do is focus on these right here. So these are going to have, just focus on where those points are in terms of bending to start off. What you're doing right here is you're transitioning from a smooth radius to a not smooth sort of thing. So sort of visualize how that would work in your brain. And then folds accordingly. So before we put that on, we're going to take this is our windshield, we're going to bend on these parts right here, and peel the paper off the back just to save some weight, because we can. And we are going to take this and glue it right on here, like that. So you're going to have to center it up and glue it on there. Now I'm going to crease these a bit more just so that they have a tendency to stay in place and not lose their form, like so. And then we'll get to gluing that. So you're going to put a bead of glue along here. There we go. And take this and lay it on there. And make sure that it stays where it needs to stay. So that looks good. So that's what that looks like. And we'll hold this here until it dries. In fact, if you'd like to, you can put a little bit of reinforcement glue around the back here, which I'm going to do. Just help it stay a bit better. So now we're going to come back to this thing right here. So this is still drying a bit, but I think it's good now. And we're going to bevel this back edge slightly because it's overhanging out a little bit. So very slightly bevel the back edge. Just a tiny smidge. There we go. And then these front ones, we're going to want all of these to be in the same plane. So these are going to, we want this paper to touch the work surface. So we're going to have to bevel these quite a lot, quite a considerable amount here. There we go. So now, if you take a look at it head on here, you can see that there is no foam below that paper. Maybe a bit here, but that's all there is. So now when we put this on here, that should meet perfectly with the windshield there, as you can see. I'll get you guys in closer for that. So that meets really nicely with that. There's not much of a seam there at all. So we're going to go ahead and glue that. The way we're going to do that, so we're going to put some glue down, bias it towards the inside, and across the top here. Again, bias it towards the inside. We don't want any spill out here. So we're going to put it in, get it down in the corners, and down across the top. And we'll hold that there. And that's about good, so we can set that aside for now. Now we're going to focus on this piece right here, and we're going to peel off paper from this big region, as well as these two little small ones. And we're going to crease these a little bit, like so. So now we're going to form this so that it forms nose. We can sort of form that into something that resembles a nose, and that's getting pretty close there. In fact, we're going to want these now are going to start going towards the center, and then the center one's just going to be there. So we'll do something like that, something like that. That's pretty darn close. We'll just give it a bit of good folding on those. And that's pretty close to what you want it to be. Now this you want to be a semicircle, so we can work that a bit. That's looking pretty good. Again, help those out. Right around here is where most of the curvature is supposed to be. That's looking good. That's looking very good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this former, we're going to glue it down to one side, and then glue it down to the other. And again, make sure it's a little bit recessed. And we will not be gluing the nose on, we'll actually be taping it on, because it's a bit of a less permanent way of doing it. And in the event that you crash, it's easier to replace. And we're going to form this a little bit more, try and help us get that other piece over the top. And you're going to find here that for this to work, the radius, or the curvature areas, the highest curvature areas have to be way far out. Alright, I don't know how much of that you just saw, but we just glued this into there. And now we're going to put a bead of glue just along the bottom of here, just to keep it in there. So there we go. That's looking pretty good. And we'll let that dry itself. Okay, next up is going to be this bit, which I call the, I forget what this is called, but it's the top. It's going to be the thing that goes up here. You can tell it's different than this one, because this one's longer of the two. And this one doesn't actually fit on there, whereas this one does. So we're going to do the same thing with this. We're going to peel this off. Set that aside. And we're going to start forming this thing. So that's looking pretty good already, holding its curvature quite well. And we're just going to bevel these edges here, as well as the back edge, slightly. And beveling this back edge will just help with joining it to the fuselage. There we go. I did a bit more than slightly on the back, but that's not that big of a deal. Okay, now we're going to tape this down on one side. Get our tape, put it down, get it on there, line it up. It's on there, good. And it's going to go around the back, around the horn. Line it up on the front there. And that's what it should be looking like. Okay. So we're going to get our piece of tape on the other end. And we're going to put some just along the former here, as well as on here. Doesn't have to be that much. This is not a structural part. And that seems good enough for what I'm trying to do. So now we've just got to get those two bottom skins and the nose here. So let's get this one first. Do the same thing, just form it. and bevel the edges. And the rear one just a tad. Okay. And we will tape and glue this. Now we're going to get this skin, do the same thing. That's looking pretty good. Except we want a bit more curvature on the front up here because that's what's going to be for the nose, which is going to be circular. Could do that as well up here. And these are going to be not bowed out like this, but they're going to be straight. We'll take this, we'll bevel it. Messed up the bevel on that one pretty bad. That's okay. We'll just tape that side first. Take this. And that's going to go in there like that. And then the front will look something like that. So, we'll get this side done, taped. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And we'll get some hot glue on here. As well as, ow, on here. Bring that across, get our tape ready. That one. And we'll worry about getting these two aligned later. This one's doing something like that. We don't want that. We'll pop that out. We're going to get these two pieces right here. And of course, we're going to peel these. So this one right here, this is going to be the very tip of the nose, so this is going to have to go like that when it's done. And obviously those little bits right there are going to have to be beveled. I'm going to take that off, like so. And this is going to look like that. And this one here, you can do the same thing. So just curl it. And these two ends here are going to meet as well, so they're going to have to be beveled. There we go. So just like that. And then this thing, this bottom edge right here, the outer edge is going to have to be beveled too, so that it fits properly. And the same is true for this. Okay, so we got that. So we're just going to tape that together, glue it on the seam. But before we do that, we want to make sure that this thing is as close to being its final form as we could possibly get it to be. So we're going to roll it up one way, roll it up the other way, like so. And that's holding its form pretty well, so we're going to go ahead and tape it. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the back of that. And we're going to do the same thing for this. So we're going to get some tape. That's good. See that? Very nice. Okay. Then we're just going to glue that a little bit. I'm going to put both of the seams pointing the same direction. And both of those, when glued onto there, will point down, but that looks about good, so we're going to do that. And get that in there. Line up the seams. It's looking good. And then just push that down a bit. While we're waiting, I'm just going to tape up this seam. Now we've got to glue that little nose cone onto here. The seam is going to point down. It's just going to go on like that. Go like that. Set it on. And then just watch around the perimeter there. Make sure everything's in the right position. And that is your nose completed. We are going to tape this on to the fuselage. Looks good. There's one. And that's the nose on. Okay, this will be one of the last bits we'll be doing, and this is the little hatch that's over the top. So we're going to peel off this, this, and these two as well. And also, the center bit here, what we're going to have to do is score into this and make a little cavity here. And what I've done here is I've just pushed these up like this, and that seems to have done something like that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to curl these outer bits and leave the inner ones not curled. So it should end up being something like that. We're going to do that for all of these bits here. Now this right here is the front. So we're going to take this former, which is the more intense one, I guess, and we're going to glue that in right there. And these little slots right here are for rubber bands to mount the wing. So we'll run a reinforcement bead inside there. And we will glue down the back one. Gonna add a bit of reinforcement here. So now we're going to bring these side bits down to join with those. And for those, we're just going to tape them, I think. We can give these a bit of a curve towards the edges as well to meet up with the other ones. These ones here too. Now we're going to take some scrap foam that we have. Let's see. We are going to cut this to a very small strip here. We're going to peel the paper off one side. And we're going to curve this. And we're going to glue this so that it's right below the skin right here. And this will latch underneath the skin on the fuselage to keep it in place. And we're going to do that at the front. There we go. And then finally, we're going to do a bevel of every edge here. And make sure to undercut it so that it joins the outside of the wing really well. Because remember, this has to lie flat against the wing, which isn't even flat, it's actually sloped upwards like this, so you're going to have to bevel it quite a lot. I'm going to do this in 2 passes. Alright, and that should do it. Right there. So now we're going to be on the ground because I don't have a place big enough to do this. What you're going to do is you're going to take the wing, you're going to put the leading edge in there, make sure the alignment tabs line up, get all the wiring in there, and set it down. And you're going to notice that it doesn't quite go in. And that's by design, I swear. So, what you're going to do is you're going to take your straight edge, and you're going to go across the back here, and you're going to cut a little bit of a way. It's probably about that much to start. There we go. And it's still not quite fitting, so we're going to cut some more off. And this is totally not because I was too lazy to include this little bit in the plans. What this does is it also helps ensure that your wing is pretty much perfectly fit in there, so there's no room to slide forward or back. And that's just going, so I'm just going to trim off just a hair more material. Alright, so that should be good. That should allow the wing to go down in there, as it does, and it is pretty well in there. There we go. Okay, let's give it a shot. It's in there nicely, and in the back as well. Okay, that's good. Good result. So now, I'm going to get my magnets and install those. I just embedded the magnet in the foam there, put some tape over it, and then here I've got 2 foam bits with the magnet in between them, and that works pretty well. I also added a little popsicle stick on the trailing edge there so that the rubber bands don't mess it up too much. So then the hatch goes on like this. If I could get that in there better with one hand. There we go. And that's on there reasonably solid. Like, it's not... It takes a good bit to get that off. Another option to using magnets would be just to have some tape going from here to here. That would be probably the easiest thing. Just like one strip here, and that should work. So here's what it looks like, all done, or pretty much close to done. The next thing to do is to get the props on, and to put the battery tray in. Here we're going to prepare the battery tray. It's just as simple as taking it, 2 lines of glue here, and 2 popsicle sticks right here. And while you're at it, you can get your battery strap, take that, and get it through there as well. Or this would go from the top side. Not like that. Have to be the other way around, I'm pretty sure. Yep, just like that. And this will be going right here, which is exactly where it needs to be to balance with the 2253 cell. I ended up moving to a linkage stopper here because the hot glue got pushed down and then the wheels contacted the lower surface. So this should hopefully keep it a bit better in there. I also ended up making this little hatch here to make it easier to get at this when installing the rubber bands. So that goes like that. And with that, I want to thank you for having a shot at building my plane, and I wish you the best of luck on your maiden flight. Fly safe.